गुरुदेव की जय। कैसे sorry विष्णु शिपाल अष्टोत्तर शतनाम श्री भक्ति वेदांत नारायण गोसाई महाराज श्री गुरुदेव की जय। विष्णु शिपाल अष्टोत्तर शतनाम श्री भक्ति वेदांत वामन गोसाई महाराज की जय। विष्णु शिपाल अष्टोत्तर शतनाम श्री भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी महाराज श्री प्रभुपाद की जय। नितिल विष्णु शिपाल अष्टोत्तर शतनाम श्री भक्ति विज्ञान केशव गोसाई महाराज की जय। नितिल विश्व विष्णुपाद अष्टोत्तर शतनाम श्री भक्ति सिद्धांत सरस्वती गोसाई प्रभुपाद की जय। नितिल विश्व महाभागवत श्री गोशरस बाबूजी महाराज की जय। नितिल विश्व श्री सच्चिदानंद भक्ति विनोद ठाकुर की जय। नितिल विश्व वैष्णव सार्वभौम श्री जगन्नाथ दास बाबूजी महाराज की जय। श्री रूप गौरिया गुरु वार्ग की जय। श्री रूप सनातन भट्ट रघुनाथ श्री जीव गोपाल पतदास रघुनाथ शार गोस्वामी प्रभु की जय। श्री स्वरूप दामोदर राय रामानंदारी श्री गौर पार्षद वृंद की जय। नामचय श्री हरिदास ठाकुर की जय। प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासरी गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। श्री क्षेत्र मंडल गौर मंडल व्रज मंडल मथुर वृंदावन धाम की जय। सर्व अभिष्ट विराट गिरिराज महाराज की जय। श्री राधा कुंड श्याम कुंड की जय। श्री मुन देवी गंगा देवी की जय। श्री तुलसी महारानी वृंद देवी की जय। श्री भक्ति देवी की जय। श्री पूर्णमासी योगमाया की जय। श्री गोपेश्वर महादेव की जय। श्री हरिनाम संकीर्तन की जय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। समागत गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। श्री निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि बोल। ओम ज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः। नमो विष्णुपदाय राधिकाय प्रियात्मने श्रीमद्भक्तिवेदान्त नारायणीति नामिने। नमो विष्णुपदाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिनिति नामिने। वंशकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपासिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। नमो महावदन्याय कृष्णप्रेमप्रदायते कृष्णाय कृष्णचैतन्य नाम्ने गौरतिशे नमः। गुरुवे गौरचन्द्राय राधिकाय तदालय कृष्णाय कृष्णभक्ताय तरभक्ताय नमो नमः। यं प्रव्रजन्तम् अनुपेतमपेतकृत्यं द्वैपायनो विरहकातर आजुहाव पुत्रेति तन्मयतया तरवोऽभिनेदुस्तं सर्वभूतहृदयमुनिमानतोऽस्मि। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयम् उदीरयेत्। शृण्वतं स्वकथा कृष्ण पुण्यश्रवणकीर्तन हृदन्तस्तु ह्यभद्राणि विधुनोति सुहृत्सतम्। नष्टप्रायेषु भद्रेषु नित्यं भागवतसेवया भगवत्युत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी। तवैवास्मि न जीवामि त्वया विना इति विज्ञाय राधे त्वां नायमां चरणन्तिकम्। भक्त्या विहीना अपराधलक्षय क्षिप्ताष्टकामादितरङ्गमध्ये कृपामयि त्वां शरणं प्रपन्ना वृन्दे नमस्ते चरणारविन्दम्। भज श्रीकृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानन्द श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासरि गौर भक्तवृन्द। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। Dandavat pranams Janardhan Prabhu and Mitra Brinda Diti. And Indira Mataji, if you're there. All right, chapter 14. So I was a bit ambitious today. I wrote that we'd read all the way up to verse 36, but let's see if we actually make it there by 8 o'clock. If we don't, then I'll just stop. Wherever we reach by 8 o'clock, I'll stop. Pregnancy of Diti in the evening. Shishuka uvacha Nishamya Kosharavind Nishamya Vinopavarnitam Hare Katam Karanasukaratmana Puna Saprachatam Utatanjalir Nachati Tripto Viduro Dritavrata. Shukdev Goswami said, after hearing from the great sage Maitreya about the Lord's incarnation as Varaha, Vidura, who had taken a vow, begged him with folded hands to please narrate further transcendental activities of the Lord, since he, Vidura, did not yet feel satisfied. And sorry about the volume being so low. I don't know why. It's a random thing. Sometimes the volume is high, sometimes it's low, and I don't know what's causing it. Vidura uvacha Tenaivatu muni shreshta harina yagyamurtina adidaita hiranyaksha hatta ityanushruma. Sri Vidura said, O chief amongst the great sages, I have heard by disciplic succession that Hiranyaksha, the original demon, was slain by the same form of sacrifices, the personality of Godhead, Lord Boar. Purport. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. As referred to previously, the boar incarnation was manifested in 2 millenniums, namely Swayambhuva and Chakshusha. In both millenniums, there was a boar incarnation of the Lord, but in the Swayambhuva millennium, he lifted the earth from within the water of the universe, and he also had a whitish complexion. Whereas in the Chakshusha millennium, he killed the first demon, Hiranyaksha. In the Swayambhuva millennium, he assumes the color white. And in the Chakshusha millennium, he assumes the color red. He assumed the color red. Okay, that's so interesting because in the verses in the previous chapter it said blue. But I always thought it was red also. Before. Anyhow. Vidura had already heard about one of them, and he proposed to hear about the other. The 2 different boar incarnations described are the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Tasya chodharatakshoni swadangshtragrena lilaya daitya cha brahman kasmadhetor abhun mridha. What was the reason, O Brahman, for the fight between the demon king and Lord Boar while the Lord was lifting the earth as his pastime? Shadhanaya bhaktaya bruhita janma vistaram rishena tripyati mana param kotuhalam hime. My mind has become very inquisitive, and therefore I am not satisfied with hearing the narration of the Lord's appearance. Please, therefore, speak more and more to a devotee who is faithful. Purport. One who is actually faithful and inquisitive is qualified to hear the transcendental pastimes of the appearance and disappearance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Vidura was a suitable candidate to receive such transcendental messages. Maitreya uvacha Sadhu virya tvaya prishtam avatara katam hare yatvam prichasi martyanam mrityu pasha vishantanim. The great sage Maitreya said, O warrior, the inquiry made by you is just befitting a devotee because it concerns the incarnation of the personality of Godhead. He is the source of liberation from the chain of birth and death for all those who are otherwise destined to die. Purport. The great sage Maitreya addressed Vidura as a warrior, not only because Vidura belonged to the Kuru family, but because he was anxious to hear about the chivalrous activities of the Lord and his incarnations of Varaha and Nrsimha. Because the inquiries concerned the Lord, they were perfectly befitting a devotee who has no taste for hearing anything mundane. There are many topics of mundane warfare, but a devotee is not inclined to hear them. The topics of the warfare in which the Lord engages do not concern the war of death, but the war against the chain of Maya, which obliges one to accept repeated birth and death. Sorry, I read that without a comma. Anyhow, it doesn't matter. You get it. In other words, one who takes delight in hearing the war topics of the Lord is relieved from the chains of birth and death. Foolish people are suspicious of Krishna's taking part in the battle of Kurukshetra, not knowing that his taking part assured liberation for all who were present on the battlefield. It is said by Bhishmadev that all who were present on the battlefield of Kurukshetra attained their original spiritual existences after death. Therefore, hearing the war topics of the Lord is as good as any other devotional service. Yayotana pada putro munina gitayar bhaka mrityo kritvaiva murdhnagrim oh my god, it's hard to say. Murdhnangrim aruroha hare padam. By hearing these topics from the sage Narad, I was just wondering what was going on. Okay. By hearing these topics from the sage Narad, the son of King Uttanapad, Dhruva, was enlightened regarding the personality of Godhead, and he ascended to the abode of the Lord, placing his feet over the head of death. Purport. While quitting his body, Maharaj Dhruva, the son of the king Uttanapad, was attended by personalities like Sunanda and others, who received him in the kingdom of God. He left this world at an early age, as a young boy, although he had attained the throne of his father and had several children of his own. Because he was due to quit this world, death was waiting for him. He did not care for death, however, and even with his present body, he boarded a spiritual airplane and went directly to the planet of Vishnu because of his association with the great sage Narad, who had spoken to him the narration of the pastimes of the Lord. Atatrapitihasoyam shrutame varnita pura brahmana deva devena devanam anuprichatam. The history of the fight between the Lord as a boar and the demon Hiranyaksha was heard by me in a year long ago, as it was described by the foremost of the demigods, Brahma, when he was questioned by the other demigods. Ditir dakshayani kshatar maricham kashyapam patim patyakama chakrame sandhyayam richayardita. Diti, the daughter of Daksha, being afflicted with sex desire, begged her husband Kashyapa, the son of Marichi, to have intercourse with her in the evening in order to beget a child. Ishtvagni jivam payasa purusham yajusham patim nimlo chatyarka asinam agnagare samahitam. The sun was setting, and the sage was sitting in trance after offering oblations to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu, whose tongue is the sacrificial fire. Fire is considered to be the tongue of the Personality of Godhead, Vishnu, and oblations of grains and clarified butter offered to the fire are thus accepted by him. That is the principle of all sacrifices, of which Lord Vishnu is the master. In other words, the satisfaction of Lord Vishnu includes satisfaction of all demigods and other living beings. Ditiruvacha Esha mam tvatkrite vidvan kama atta sharasana dunoti dina vikramya rambhamiva matangaja. In that place, the beautiful Diti expressed her desire. O learned one, Cupid is taking his arrows and distressing me forcibly, as a mad elephant troubles a banana tree. Purport. Beautiful Diti, seeing her husband absorbed in trance, began to speak loudly, not attempting to attract him by bodily expressions. She frankly said that her whole body was distressed by sex desire because of her husband's presence, just as a banana tree is troubled by a mad elephant. It was not natural for her to agitate her husband when he was in trance, but she could not control her strong sexual appetite. Her sex desire was like a mad elephant, and therefore it was the prime duty of her husband to give her all protection by fulfilling her desire. Tarbhavan dahyamanayam sapatninam samriddhibhi prajavatinam bhadram te mayan yungtam anugraham. Therefore, you should be kind towards me by showing me complete mercy. I desire to have sons, and I am much distressed by seeing the opulence of my co-wives. By performing this act, you will become happy. Purport. In Bhagavad Gita, sexual intercourse for begetting children is accepted as righteous. A person sexually inclined for simple sense gratification, however, is unrighteous. In Diti's appeal to her husband for sex, it was not exactly that she was afflicted by sex desires, but she desired sons. Since she had no sons, she felt poorer than her co-wives. Therefore, Kashyapa was supposed to satisfy his bona fide wife. Bhartaraptorumanana lokana vishate yasha patir bhavat vido yasam prajaya nanujayate. A woman is honored in the world by the benediction of her husband, and a husband like you will become famous by having children because you are meant for the expansion of living entities. Purport. According to Rishabdev, one should not become a father or mother unless one is confident that he can beget children whom he can deliver from the clutches of birth and death. Big responsibility in becoming a parent. Human life is the only opportunity to get out of the material scene, which is full of the miseries of birth, death, old age, and diseases. Every human being should be given the opportunity to take advantage of his human form of life, and a father like Kashyapa is supposed to beget good children for the purpose of liberation. Purapitano Bhagavan Daksha Duhi Trivatsala Kamvrinita Varam Vatsa Itya Prichatana Pritak. In days long ago, our father, the most opulent Daksha, who was affectionate to his daughters, asked each of us separately whom we would prefer to select as our husband. Purport. It appears from this verse that free selection of a husband was allowed by the father, but not by free association. The daughters were asked separately to submit their selection of a husband who was famous for his acts and personality. The ultimate selection depended on the choice of the father. Saviditvatmajanam no bhavam santana bhavana trayodasha dadhatasam yaste shilam anuvrata. Our well-wishing father, Daksha, after knowing our intentions, handed over 13 of his daughters unto you, and since then we have all been faithful. Purport. Generally, the daughters were too shy to express their opinions before their father, but the father would accept the daughter's intentions through someone else, such as a grandmother to whom the grandchildren had free access. King Daksha collected the opinions of his daughters and thus handed over 13 to Kashyapa. Every one of Diti's sisters was a mother of children. Therefore, since she was equally faithful to the same husband, why should she remain without children? Attame kuru kalyanam kamam kamalalochana artapasarpanam bhuman amogam hi mahiyasi. O lotus-eyed one, kindly bless me by fulfilling my desire. When someone in distress approaches a great person, his plea should never go in vain. Diti knew well that her requests might be rejected because of the untimely situation, but she pleaded that when there is an emergency or a distressful condition, there is no consideration of time or situation. Iti tang viramaricha kripanam bahu bhashinim pratyahanu nayan vacha pravriddang nangakashmalam. O hero Vidura, Diti, thus feeling afflicted by the contamination of lust, and therefore poor and talkative, was pacified by the son of Marichi and suitable words. Purport. When a man or woman is afflicted by the lust of sex desire, it is to be understood as sinful contamination. Kashyapa was engaged in his spiritual activities, but he did not have sufficient strength to refuse his wife, who was thus afflicted. He could have refused her with strong words expressing impossibility, but he was not as spiritually strong as Vidura. Vidura is addressed here as a hero because no one is stronger in self-control than a devotee of the Lord. It appears that Kashyapa was already inclined to have sexual enjoyment with his wife, and because he was not a strong man, he tried to dissuade her only with pacifying words. Esha te ham vidasyami priyam piru yada ichasi tasya kamam nakha kuryat siddhistrai vargikiyata. O afflicted one, I shall forthwith gratify whatever desire is dear to you, for who else but you is the source of the three perfections of liberation? Purport. The three perfections of liberation are religiosity, economic development, and sense gratification. For a conditioned soul, the wife is considered to be the source of liberation because she offers her service to the husband for his ultimate liberation. Conditional material existence is based on sense gratification, and if someone has the good fortune to get a good wife, he is helped by the wife in all respects. If one is disturbed in his conditional life, he becomes more and more entangled in material contamination. A faithful wife is supposed to cooperate with her husband in fulfilling all material desires so that he can then become comfortable and execute spiritual activities for the perfection of life. If, however, the husband is progressive in spiritual advancement, the wife undoubtedly shares in his activities, and thus both the wife and the husband profit in spiritual perfection. It is essential, therefore, that girls as well as boys be trained to discharge spiritual duties so that at the time of cooperation, both will be benefited. The training of the boy is brahmacharya, and the training of the girl is chastity. A faithful wife and spiritually trained brahmachari are a good combination for advancement of the human mission. Sarvashraman upadaya swashramena kalatravam vyasanarnavam atyeti jalayanar yatarnavam. As one can cross over the ocean with sea-going vessels, one can cross the dangerous situation of the material ocean by living with a wife. Purport. There are 4 social orders for cooperation in the endeavor for liberation from material existence. The orders of brahmacharya are pious student life, household life with a wife, retired life, and renounced life. All depend for successful advancement on the householder who lives with a wife. This cooperation is essential for the proper functioning of the institution of the four social orders and the four spiritual orders of life. This Vedic Varnashram system is generally known as the caste system. The man who lives with a wife has a great responsibility in maintaining the members of the other social orders, the brahmacharis, vanaprasthas, and sannyasis. Except for the grahastas, or the householders, everyone is supposed to engage in the spiritual advancement of life, and therefore the brahmachari, the vanaprastha, and the sannyasi have very little time to earn a livelihood. They therefore collect alms from the grahastas, and thus they secure the bare necessities of life and cultivate spiritual understanding. By helping the other three sections of society cultivate spiritual values, the householder also makes advancement in spiritual life. Ultimately, every member of society automatically becomes spiritually advanced and easily crosses the ocean of nescience. Yam ahoratmano hyartam shreyas kamasya manini yasyam swadhuram adhyasya pumangsharati vijvara. O respectful one, a wife is so helpful that she is called the better half of a man's body because her sharing in all auspicious activities. A man can move without anxiety, entrusting all responsibilities to his wife. Purport. By the Vedic injunction, the wife is accepted as the better half of a man's body because she is supposed to be responsible for discharging half of the duties of the husband. A family man has a responsibility to perform 5 kinds of sacrifices, called pancha yajna, in order to get relief from all kinds of unavoidable sinful reaction incurred in the course of his affairs. When a man becomes qualitatively like the cats and dogs, he forgets his duties in cultivating spiritual values, and thus he accepts his wife as a sense gratificatory agency. When the wife is accepted as a sense gratificatory agency, personal beauty is the main consideration, and as soon as there is a break in personal sense gratification, there is a disruption or divorce. But when husband and wife aim at spiritual advancement by mutual cooperation, there is no consideration of personal beauty or the disruption of so-called love. In the material world, there is no question of love. Marriage is actually a duty performed in mutual cooperation as directed in the authoritative scriptures for spiritual advancement. Therefore, marriage is essential in order to avoid the life of cats and dogs who are not meant for spiritual advancement. Yamashritendriya, oh God, Ashritendriya. Oh my God! I don't know why I had such a hard time saying that. Durjayan itarashramai vayam jaye mahela bir dasyun durga patiryata. As a fort commander very easily conquers invading plunderers. By taking shelter of a wife, one can conquer the senses, which are unconquerable in the other 4 social orders. That's an interesting verse. Purport. Of the 4 orders of human society, the student or brahmachari order, the householder or grahastha order, the retired or vanaprastha order, and the renounced or sannyasi order, the householder is on the safe side. The bodily senses are considered plunders of the fort of the body. The wife is supposed to be the commander of the fort, and therefore, whenever there is an attack on the body by the senses, it is the wife who protects the body from being smashed. The sex demand is inevitable for everyone, but one who has a fixed wife is saved from the onslaught of the sense enemies. A man who possesses a good wife does not create a disturbance in society by corrupting virgin girls. Without a fixed wife, a man becomes a debauchee of the first order and is a nuisance in society, unless he is a trained brahmachari, vanaprastha, or sannyasi. Unless there is a rigid and systematic training of the brahmachari by the expert spiritual master, and unless the student is obedient, it is sure that the so-called brahmachari will fall prey to the attack of sex. There are so many instances of a fall down, even for great...
I found this on the web for does this so-called Ramachandra Fox say to the attack of sex? Check it out.
Sorry. Oh, God. My Siri was listening to our Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam class. Okay, unless there is a rigid and systematic training of the brahmachari by this expert spiritual master, and unless the student is obedient, it is sure that the so-called brahmachari will fall prey to the attack of sex. There are so many instances of fall down, even for great yogis like Vishvamitra. A grihastha is saved, however, because of his faithful wife. Sex life is the cause of material bondage, and therefore it is prohibited in...
I don't know what you mean by. It is sure that the so-called operator, the attack of sex, there's so many instances of fall down, even for great yogis language for me, then say it, however, because of respectful wife. How about a web search for it?
Oh my God, what's going on? I don't even know how to turn off Siri. Anyhow. A grihastha is saved, however, because of his faithful wife. Sex life is the cause of material bondage, and therefore it is prohibited in the 3 ashrams, and is allowed only in the grihastha ashram. The grihastha is responsible for producing first-quality brahmacharis, vanaprasthas, and sannyasis. Na vayam prabhavastam tvam anukartum griheshwari apyayusha vakartsnena ye chanye gunagridnava. O Queen of the home, we are not able to act like you, nor could we repay you for what you have done, even if we worked for our entire life, or even after death. To repay you is not possible, even for those who are admirers of personal qualities. Purport. So much glorification of a woman by her husband indicates that he is henpecked or is talking lightly in joke. Kashyapa meant that householders living with their wives enjoy the heavenly blessings of sense enjoyment, and at the same time have no fear of going down to hell. The man in the renounced order of life has no wife, and may be driven by sex desire to seek another woman or another's wife, and thus go to hell. In other words, the so-called man of the renounced order, who has left his house and wife, goes to hell if he again desires sexual pleasure, knowingly or unknowingly. In that way, the householders are on the side of safety. Therefore, husbands as a class cannot repay their debt to women, either in this life or in the next. Even if they engage themselves in repaying the women throughout their whole lives, it is still not possible. Not all husbands are as able to appreciate the good qualities of their wives. But even though one is able to appreciate these qualities, it is still not possible to repay the debt to the wife. Such extraordinary praises by a husband for his wife are certainly in the mode of joking. Atapi kamametante prajatyay karavanyalam yatamam natirochanti muhurtang pratipalaya. Even though it is not possible to repay you, I shall satisfy your sex desire immediately for the sake of begetting children. But you must wait for only a few seconds so that others may not reproach me. Purport. The henpecked husband may not be able to repay his wife for all the benefits that he derives from her. But as for begetting children by fulfilling sexual desire, it is not at all difficult for any husband unless he is thoroughly impotent. This is a very easy task for a husband under normal conditions. In spite of Kashyapa's being very eager, he requested her to wait for a few seconds so that others might not reproach him. He explains his position as follows. Esha Goratama Vela Goranam Goradarshana Charanti Yasyam Bhutani Bhuteshanu Charaniha. This particular time is most inauspicious because at this time the horrible-looking ghosts and constant companions of the Lord, the horrible-looking ghosts and the constant companions of the Lord of the ghosts are visible. Purport. Kashyapa has already told his wife Diti to wait for a while, and now he warns her that failure to consider the particular time will result in punishment from the ghosts and evil spirits who move during this time, along with their master, Lord Rudra. Etasyam sadviv sandhyayam Bhagavan bhuta bhavana parito bhuta parashadbir vrishenatati bhutarat. Lord Shiva, the king of ghosts, sitting on the back of his bull carrier, travels at this time, accompanied by ghosts who follow him for their welfare. Purport. Lord Shiva, or Rudra, is the king of the ghosts. Ghostly characters worship Lord Shiva to be gradually guided toward a path of self-realization. Mayavadi philosophers are mostly worshippers of Lord Shiva, and Shripad Shankaracharya is considered to be the incarnation of Lord Shiva for preaching godlessness to the Mayavadi philosophers. Ghosts are bereft of a physical body because of their grievously sinful acts, such as suicide. The last result of the ghostly characters in human society is to take shelter of suicide, either material or spiritual. Material suicide causes loss of the physical body, and spiritual suicide causes loss of the individual identity. Mayavadi philosophers desire to lose their individuality and merge into the impersonal spiritual Brahmajyoti existence. Lord Shiva, being very kind to the ghosts, sees that although they are condemned, they get physical bodies. He places them into the wombs of women who indulge in sexual intercourse regardless of the restrictions of time and circumstance. Kashyapa wanted to impress this fact upon Diti so that she might wait for a while. Shmashana chakra niladhuli dhumra vikirna vidyota jata kalapa bhasma vagunta malarukma deho devastribi pashyati devaraste. Lord Shiva's body is reddish, and he is unstained, but he is covered with ashes. His hair is dusty from the whirlwind dust of the burning crematorium. He is the younger brother of your husband, and he sees with his 3 eyes. Purport. Lord Shiva is not an ordinary living entity, nor is he in the category of Vishnu, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is far more powerful than any living entity, up to the standard of Brahma. Yet he is not on an equal level with Vishnu. Since he is almost like Lord Vishnu, Shiva can see past, present, and future. One of his eyes is like the sun, another is like the moon, and his third eye, which is between his eyebrows, is like fire. He can generate fire from his middle eye, and he is able to vanquish any powerful living entity, including Brahma. Yet he does not live pompously in a nice house, etc., nor does he possess any material properties, although he is the master of the material world. He lives mostly in the crematorium, where dead bodies are burnt, and the whirlwind dust of the crematorium is his bodily dress. He is unstained by material contamination. Kashyapa took him as his younger brother because the youngest sister of Diti, Kashyapa's wife, was married to Lord Shiva. The husband of one's sister is considered one's brother. By that social relationship, Lord Shiva happened to be the younger brother of Kashyapa. Kashyapa warned his wife that because Lord Shiva would see their sex indulgence, the time was not appropriate. Diti might argue that they would enjoy sex life in a private place, but Kashyapa reminded her that Shiva has 3 eyes called the sun, moon, and fire, and one cannot escape his vigilance any more than one can escape Vishnu. Although seen by the police, a criminal is sometimes not immediately punished. The police wait for the proper time to apprehend him. The forbidden time for sexual intercourse would be noted by Lord Shiva, and Diti would meet with proper punishment by giving birth to a child of ghostly character or a godless impersonalist. Kashyapa foresaw this, and thus he warned his wife Diti. That's kind of cool. The punishment is a child of ghostly character or a Mayavadi. Nayasya loke swajana parova natya dhrito nota kashtir vagharya vayang pratarya charana pavitam ashasmahe jam vatabhukta bhogam. Lord Shiva regards no one as his relative, yet there is no one who cannot connect up. Lord Shiva regards no one as his relative, yet there is no one who is not connected with him. He does not regard anyone as very favorable or abominable. We respectfully worship the remnants of his foodstuff, and we vow to accept what is rejected by him. Purport. Kashyapa informed his wife that just because Lord Shiva happened to be his brother-in-law, that we should not encourage her in her offense towards him. Kashyapa warned her that actually Lord Shiva is not connected with anyone, nor is anyone his enemy. Since he is one of the 3 controllers of the universal affairs, he is equal to everyone. His greatness is incomparable because he is a great devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is said that among all the devotees of the Personality of Godhead, Lord Shiva is the greatest. Thus, the remnants of foodstuff left by him are accepted by other devotees as Mahaprasad, our great spiritual foodstuff. The prasad remnants of foodstuffs offered to Lord Krishna are called prasad, but when the same prasad is eaten by a great devotee like Lord Shiva, it is called Mahaprasad. Lord Shiva is so great that he does not care for the material prosperity for which every one of us is so eager. Parvati, who is the powerful material nature personified, is under his full control as his wife. Yet he does not use her, even to build a residential house. He prefers to remain without shelter, and his great wife also agrees to live with him humbly. People in general worship Goddess Durga, the wife of Lord Shiva, for material prosperity, but Lord Shiva engages her in his service without material desire. He simply advises his great wife that all kinds of worship, the worship of Vishnu is the worship of Vishnu is the highest, and greater than that is the worship of a great devotee or anything in relation with Vishnu. Yasya navadhyarcharitam manishino grinanta vedya patalam bibitsava nirasta samyash yatishayopi yatsvayam pishachacharyam acharadhati satam. Although no one in the material world is equal to or greater than Lord Shiva, and although his unimpeachable character is followed by great souls to dismantle the mass of nescience, he nevertheless remains as if a devil to give salvation to all devotees of the Lord. Purport. Lord Shiva's uncivilized devilish characteristics are never abominable because he teaches the sincere devotees of the Lord how to practice detachment from material enjoyment. He is called Mahadev, or the greatest of all demigods, and no one is equal to or greater than him in the material world. He is almost equal to Lord Vishnu. Although he always associates with Maya, Durga, he is above the reactionary stage of the three modes of material nature. And although he is in charge of the devilish characteristics in the mode of ignorance, he is not affected by such association. Hasanti yasar charitam hi durbagha swatman ratasya vidusha samihitam yarvastra malya bharana nuplepanai swabhojana swat matayo palalitam. Unfortunate unfortunate foolish persons, not knowing that he is engaged in his own self, laugh at him. Such foolish persons engage in maintaining the body, which is eatable by dogs, with dresses, ornaments, garlands, and ointments. Purport. Lord Shiva never accepts any luxurious dress, garland, ornament, or ointment, but those who are addicted to the decoration of the body, which is finally eatable by dogs, very luxuriously maintain it as a self. Such persons do not understand Lord Shiva, but they approach him for luxurious material comforts. There are two kinds of devotees of Lord Shiva. One class is the gross materialists seeking only bodily comforts from Lord Shiva, and the other class are desirous to become one with him. They are mostly impersonalists and prefer to chant Shivoham, I am Shiva, or after liberation, I shall become one with Lord Shiva. In other words, the karmis and gyanis are generally devotees of Lord Shiva, but they do not properly understand his real purpose in life. Sometimes so-called devotees of Lord Shiva imitate him in using poisonous intoxicants. Lord Shiva once swallowed an ocean of poison, and thus his throat became blue. The imitation Shivas try to follow him by indulging in poisons, and thus they are ruined. The real purpose of Lord Shiva is to serve the soul of the soul, Lord Krishna. He desires that all luxurious articles, such as nice garments, garlands, ornaments, and cosmetics, be given to Lord Krishna only, because Krishna is the real enjoyer. He refuses to accept such luxurious items himself, because they are only meant for Krishna. However, since they do not know this purpose of Lord Shiva, foolish persons either laugh at him or profitlessly try to imitate him. Brahmadayo yat krita setupala yat karanam vishvam idam chamaya agyakari yasya pishachacharya aho vibhum nascharitam vidambanam. Demigods like Brahma also follow the religious rites observed by him. He is the controller of the material energy, which causes the creation of the material world. He is great, and therefore his devilish characteristics are simply imitation. Purport. Lord Shiva is the husband of Durga, the controller of the material energy. Durga is the personified material energy, and Lord Shiva, being her husband, is the controller of the material energy. He is also the incarnation of the mode of ignorance, and one of the three deities representing the Supreme Lord. As his representative, Lord Shiva is identical with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is very great, and his renunciation of all material enjoyment is an ideal example of how one should be materially unattached. One should therefore follow in his footsteps and be unattached to matter, not imitate his uncommon acts like drinking poison. Maitreya Uvacha Saivam Sangvidite Bharata Manmatondmatitendriya Jagraha Vasabrahmarshir Vrishaliva Gatatrapa. Maitreya said, Diti was thus informed by her husband, but she was pressed by Cupid for sexual satisfaction. She caught hold of the clothing of the great Brahmin sage, just like a shameless public prostitute. Purport. The difference between a married wife and a public prostitute is that one is restrained in sex life by the rules and regulations of the scriptures, whereas the other is unrestricted in sex life and is conducted solely by the strong sex urge. Although very enlightened, Kashyapa, the great sage, became a victim of his prostitute wife. Such is the strong force of material energy. Savididvata bharyayas Nirbandhnam vikarmani natvadishtaya rahasi tayathopa. Understanding his wife's purpose, he was obliged to perform the forbidden act, and thus, after offering his obeisances unto worshipable fate, he lay with her in a secluded place. Purport. It appears from the talks of Kashyapa with his wife that he was a worshipper of Lord Shiva, and although he knew that Lord Shiva would not be pleased with him for such a forbidden act, he was obliged to act by his wife's desire, and thus he offered his obeisances unto fate. He knew that the child born of such untimely sexual intercourse would certainly not be a good child, but could not protect himself because he was too obligated to his wife. In a similar case, however, when Thakur Haridas was tempted by a public prostitute at the dead of night, he avoided the allurement because of his perfection in Krishna consciousness. That is the difference between a Krishna conscious person and others. Kashyapa Muni was greatly learned and enlightened, and he knew all the rules and regulations of systematic life, yet he failed to protect himself from the attack of sex desire. Thakur Haridas was not born of a Brahmin family, nor was he himself a Brahmin. Yet he could protect himself from such an attack due to his being Krishna conscious. Thakur Haridas used to chant the holy name of the Lord 300,000 times daily. Atopasprisya shalilam pranam ayam yavagyata dhyayan japa virajam brahma jyoti sanatanam. Thereafter, the Brahmin took his bath in the water and controlled his speech by practicing trance, meditating on the eternal effulgence and chanting the holy Gayatri hymns within his mouth. Purport. As one has to take bath after using the toilet, so one has to wash himself with water after sexual intercourse, especially when at a forbidden time. Kashyapa Muni meditated on the impersonal Brahmajyoti by chanting the Gayatri mantra within his mouth. When a Vedic mantra is chanted within the mouth so that only the chanter can hear, the chanting is called japa. But when such mantras are chanted loudly, it is called kirtan. The Vedic hymn Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare can be chanted both softly to oneself or loudly. Therefore, it is called the Maha Mantra, or the great hymn. Kashyapa Muni appears to be an impersonalist. Comparing his character with that of Thakur Haridas as referred to above, it is clear that the personalist is stronger in sense control than the impersonalist. This is explained in Bhagavad Gita as param drishtva nivartate, i.e., one ceases to accept lower grade things when one is situated in a superior condition. One is supposed to be purified after taking bath and chanting Gayatri, but the Maha Mantra is so powerful that one can chant loudly or softly in any condition, and he is protected from all the evils of material existence. Diti stu vridita tena karma vadena bharata upasangamya viprarshim adhamukya bhyabhasshata. O son of the Bharat family, Diti, after this, went nearer to her husband, her face lowered because of her faulty action. She spoke as follows. When one is ashamed of an of an abominable action, one naturally becomes down-faced. Diti came to her senses after the abominable sexual intercourse with her husband. Such sexual intercourse is condemned as prostitution. In other words, sex life with one's wife is equal to prostitution if the regulations are not properly followed. Ditiruvacha Name garbam imam brahmam. Okay, 2 more minutes left. We're almost finished. We're reading up to verse 36, so I think we can do it. Name garbam imam brahmam bhutanam rishabho vadit rudrapatir hi bhutanam yasya karavam amhansam. The beautiful Diti said, "My dear Brahman, kindly see that my embryo is not killed by Lord Shiva, the Lord of all living entities, because of the great offense I have committed against him." Purport. Diti was conscious of her offense and was anxious to be excused by Lord Shiva. Lord Shiva has two popular names, Rudra and Ashutosh. He is very prone to anger as well as quickly pacified. Diti knew that because of his being quickly angered, he might spoil the pregnancy she had so unlawfully achieved. But because he was also Ashutosh, she implored her Brahmin husband to help her in pacifying Lord Shiva, for her husband was a great devotee of Lord Shiva. In other words, Lord Shiva might have been angry with Diti because she obliged her husband to transgress the law, but he would not refuse her husband's prayer. Therefore, the application for excuse was submitted to through her husband. She prayed to Lord Shiva as follows. Namo
It's 8
Rudraya
o'clock.
Mahate Devayograya Mitush Devayograya Mitushe Shivaya Nyastatandaya Dritadandaya Manyave. Okay, almost finished. Let me offer my obeisances unto the angry Lord Shiva, who is simultaneously the very ferocious demigod and the fulfiller of all material desires. He is all auspicious and forgiving, but his anger could immediately move him to chastise. Purport. Diti prayed for the mercy of Lord Shiva very cleverly. She prayed, "The Lord can cause me to cry. The Lord can cause me to cry, but if he likes, he can also stop my crying because he is Ashutosh. He is so great that if he likes, he can immediately destroy my pregnancy. But by his mercy, he can also fulfill my desire that my pregnancy not be spoiled. Because he is all auspicious, it is not difficult for him to excuse me from being punished, although he is now ready to punish me, because I have moved in his great anger. He appears like a man, but he is the Lord of all men." Okay, we're ending with this verse here. Sana prasidatang bhamo bhagavan urvanugraha vyatasyapyanukampyanam strinam deva satipati. Let him be pleased with us, since he is my brother-in-law, the husband of my sister Sati. He is also the worshipable Lord of all women. He is the personality of all opulences and can show mercy towards women who are excused even by the uncivilized hunters. Purport. Lord Shiva is the husband of Sati, one of the sisters of Diti. Diti invoked the pleasure of her sister Sati so that Sati would request her husband to excuse her. Besides that, Lord Shiva is the worshipable Lord of all women. He is naturally very kind towards women, on whom even the uncivilized hunters also show their mercy. Since Lord Shiva is himself associated with women, he knows very well their defective nature, and he might not take very seriously Diti's unavoidable offense, which occurred due to her faulty nature. Every virgin girl is supposed to be a devotee of Lord Shiva. Diti remembered her childhood worship of Lord Shiva and begged his mercy. Okay, let's just read this verse. There's no purport here. Maitre uvacha swasargasya shisham lokyam ashasanam pravepatim nivritti sandhaniyam bharyam aha prajapati. Maitreya said, The great sage Kashyapa thus addressed his wife, who was trembling because of fear that her husband was offended. She understood that he had been dissuaded from his daily duties of offering evening prayers, yet she desired the welfare of her children in the world. And so we will read what Kashyapa said tomorrow. All right. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur, Hari Bol. Jai Shishi Guru Gauranga Gandharvika Giridhari, Shishi Radha Vinod Bihari Ju ki Jai, Shri Govinda Gopinath Maran Mohan Ju ki Jai, Nitil Pravishtam Vishnupar Ashtatara Shata Shrimad Shila Bhakti Vedanta Narayan Gosai Maharaj Shila Gurudeva ki Jai, Nitil Pravishtam Vishnupar Ashtatara Shata Shrimad Shila Bhakti Vedanta Vaman Gosai Maharaj ki Jai, Nitil Pravishtam Vishnupar Ashtatara Shata Shrimad Shila Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Shila Prabhupada ki Jai. Nitil Vishnu Vishnupad Ashtatara Shatashmad Shila Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Gosai Maharaj ki Jai. Nitil Vishnu Vishnupad Ashtatara Shatashmad Shila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Gosai Prabhupada ki Jai. Nitil Vishnu Maha-Bhagavat Shila Goksharas Babaji Maharaj ki Jai. Nitil Vishnu Shila Satchidananda Bhakti Vinod Thakur ki Jai. Nitil Vishnu Vaishnav Sarvabhauma Shila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj ki Jai. Shri Rupa Nuga Gauriya Guru Varga ki Jai. Shri Rupa Sanatan Bhatta Raghunath Shri Jeev Gopal Padadash Raghunath Shad Gosai Prabhu ki Jai. Shri Sarup Damodar Rai Ramanandari Shri Gaur Parshad Vrinda ki Jai. Nam Acharya Shri Haridas Thakur ki Jai. Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki Jai. Shri Kshetra Mandal Gaura Mandal Vraja Mandal Mathura Vrindavan Dham ki Jai. Sarva Abhishya Bharata Giriraj Maharaj ki Jai. Shri Radha Kund Shama Kund ki Jai. Shri Muna Devi Ganga Devi ki Jai. Shri Tulsi Maharani Vrinda Devi ki Jai. Shri Bhakti Devi ki Jai. Shri Purnamasi Yogamaya ki Jai. Shri Gopeshwar Mahadev ki Jai. Shri Harinam Sankirtan ki Jai. Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda ki Jai. Samagata Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki Jai. Grantaraj Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam ki Jai. Shinitai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bo. Vrindai Tulsi Devai Priyai Keshavashacha Krishna Bhakti Pradadevi Sattvatai Namo Namaha. Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Dandavat Pranam. So I might later today I might read the rest of this chapter because tomorrow I want to read. Yes, tomorrow is such a big day, and so I'd like to read about Srila Vaman Goswami Maharaj and Srila Gurudev. So maybe I'll read later on today because we're right in the middle of the story, and so I don't really want to break it for a full day. I don't know. And then you can listen to it later on your own time, whenever you get time. I don't know. I'm just thinking about it. Anyhow, all right. Thank you for joining me. Haribol. Yeah, because we don't have that much left with the chapter. See, look, this is the chart, and we're these last two parts right here, this and this. So it won't take very long to read the rest of the chapter. Anyhow, okay. Haribol. Dandavat Pranams.